Very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's uLaw webinar. The title or topic for today's webinar is the Client Intake Portal for Law Office Client Intake or Client Management. So that's really the title. This is not accredited for any CPD credits. I will draw your attention real quick to our website. Info. So basically we're going to be showcasing how you could pretty much walk through an automation of the client intake process using what we call today as the uLaw client portal. We're certainly going to showcase some of the evolution of how a legal firm has started to begin taking client intake, evolved into the web forms of the world, PDF forms, and today we're trying to automate many of these processes for you as a legal office. We do have our CPD session coming up next week that talks about disbursements demystified, that really highlights the importance of disbursements and how best to manage it in a very compliant manner. Okay? So today's webinar on Client Intake Portal is going to be a quick and easy demonstration of the portal solution that we've introduced as one of the key components of the uLaw platform. If you are a current user of the uLaw system or are exploring a legal accounting and practice management system, this would be of definite interest to you in appreciating how best you can automate some of these client intake processes for your firm. Please use the chat window at all times to ask any questions if you have. If you have any issues with the quality of the audio on your computer, we have phone numbers that you can dial into as well. And please do ask any questions that you may have at any given time. This particular webinar is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel, uLawPractice, as early as Monday next week. Okay, so like every other uLaw webinar, today's webinar has this specific agenda. We're going to talk about the client intake process and how important or pivotal it is to that first data entry point or your first correspondence with the customer or your client or a prospective client. We'll briefly touch upon the importance of the client intake form as it pertains to compliance. Though we're not going to talk a lot about the compliance component today, we're certainly going to highlight why it is important to capture certain pieces of information. And then talk about what are the different vehicles or opportunities using the uLaw platform that you have as a user, as a legal firm, as a sole practitioner to capture client information from that prospective client. Okay, so we'll look at examples of intake forms in the form of PDFs, the traditional ability to intake while you're on the phone, so using the current uLaw web form on our platform to input that data, using QR codes if you are starting to correspond or collaborate with your customers using social media or using WhatsApp or text, the importance of QR code for them to be able to quickly scan and get into a portal link. And of course, evolution of that is to be able to provide a link, a very secured link through the uLaw portal today as a first step to be able to accept client intake information. And the reason why we highlight as the first step is as we evolve the product and the platform, similar to our app, we're looking to expand other possibilities within our portal, such as sharing invoices, maybe digital signatures. Quick question. Today's webinar is not accredited for any CPD credits, as I had mentioned before. The webinar next week is going to be a CPD session. And let me highlight that. Okay. And in a couple of weeks, we have another important webinar that I highly encourage you, if you have the time, to participate in, which is called DIY Forms. It's a relatively newer feature within the platform that allows you to create your own forms within the uLaw platform. In the past, we were specifically rigid about the template, but now we're really allowing you and democratizing the whole forms feature, if you will, that allows you as the user to build your own forms. And client intake, of course, can be one of those forms that you create for yourself. All you need to be understanding of is the data elements within uLaw. So when you're creating your own form, ensuring that you're associating a field with the relevant uLaw database. So we're really helping our users bring that DIY experience into the platform as well. And we're having a webinar in a couple of weeks to highlight that. Okay. Before I run into the portal, and again, I'll try and make this fast and easy because it's a non-CPD session. I'll highlight that the client intake process, as you probably already know, is one of the fundamental professional obligations that you have as a legal practitioner. And I'm sure you're quite aware of it. And what's interesting to note is that first correspondence, or the first piece of information that you need to capture, translates into documents, both compliant and non-compliant in nature, and captures certain fields that can be very instrumental for the success of your business, as well relate to meaningful compliance documents. A very simple example of that would be a source of contact. So today, in your business, no matter how you're capturing the initial client information, do you have a success strategy to capture the source of contact from your customers, which is how did they get to know you? I'm pretty sure quite a few of you, especially if you're using web forms and the websites, already ask it. But are you able to now report on that information captured? Is it just a one-time for you to understand, and is it just through email? How are you further adding that information to the client form so that you can run a source of contact report, which is, by the way, a compliance report? Are you capturing the importance of client validation? What is the client ID verification that you're checking out, whether it's an in-person visit or if it's someone who's just sending you information via your web form? Okay? But as you can see, as part of that initial professional obligation around client intake service and communication, we'll focus on the client intake process. Okay? The importance of recording that client intake information, which then leads to a very important compliance step, which is that of you doing the conflict checks. Okay? So we're going to focus on these first two steps and how easy it can be today for you using the uLaw platform. Okay. Now before I jump into showcasing the portal, definitely want to highlight once again that today's session is not accredited for any CPD credits, and we do apologize if by any chance you were misled to believe so. The CPD session is going to be next week, and I'll reiterate our webinar for that, or our website rather. So today is about the automation of the client intake process using the client portal. Next week is when we're going to have our 1-hour CPD session called Disbursements Demystified. So I do apologize for any miscommunication, but today's webinar is not accredited for any CPD credits. Okay? All right, so uLaw has evolved, of course, with time to accommodate the needs of customers in how they better prefer to capture information. And there's never one simple bullet to do it, right? So there's no a single solution for it. So this is a multitude platform that allows you to capture information through various vehicles. So client portal can be one such vehicle that you use for convenience. You may also use a PDF document, the way I'm showing you right now, which has a simple client intake form where you can send it as a form for someone to download, fill out, and email it back to you. Because it also comes down to customer behavior and what they prefer as a way of corresponding with you. So you really want to have multiple different options based on the customer behavior and who you have as your prospective customer. One such is the client intake form, which is a simple PDF that you can download from the uLaw system, send it as a PDF to your customer, have them fill it out with all the important information. It's a preset document, and there are some examples of based on the areas of practices sometimes. And once you receive that information back from your customer with all the data filled in, all you need to do is upload or import that PDF document into the uLaw system, and then we automatically create a client information for you. Okay, so that's one route of doing things. So here's a good example of the next variation of that, which is doing it yourself, where you now can create your own form of a client intake form at that. You don't have to depend on a specific format that we give you through the previous options. If you are very certain and if you have a bit of information in terms of the database, and of course we're here to help you through our support team to help you build these forms for your business. The client intake form is one such document, but imagine this could be your retainer letter. This could be other forms of specific documents within your legal business that now you can pretty much, I would say, generalize for your own business. So really customize it for your own business and your own customers' experience. But what's critical is you should have a bit of information and are willing to learn through those support calls with us about the form and how it relates to the fields behind the scene with uLaw. Okay? So this is your DIY experience, and I'll definitely walk you through this in the product. Of course, the most fundamental client intake form would be right within the product, where you're able to just click on the Add New Client. It's a web form because we are a fully web-built solution. But the assumption there is either someone's at the door in your office or on the phone where you're able to fill out the information when you have them and their attention. Okay, so that's the third route. So you have three different routes through which you can now capture your client intake information. Logging into uLaw and entering it into uLaw, which is predominantly what our customers do today. We're starting to see the evolution of people using preset PDF forms that we give you that are compliant based on the compliance nature of the law societies. The third, more recent adoption is around DIY, where you can create your own custom client intake form using our help. And the fourth, which is the bigger highlight for today's presentation, is this new concept of uLaw's portal solution. Okay? So through these four different routes, we at uLaw are able to provide you your options that you need, that you can best exercise based on the demographic, based on the customer behavior, and based on your own convenience of usage. But the bottom line being that you're able to capture this information in a fast, efficient, compliant manner that allows you to move forward with the next steps that are related to your own professional obligation around client intake and communication. Okay? And I'm going to quickly jump out of my presentation because I just want to set the context really into my uLaw platform. Now I'm logged in here as my fictitious legal practitioner, Roger Moore, and If this is your first time experiencing the uLaw platform, we are a Canadian company, 256-bit encrypted, cloud-enabled, native cloud-based system. Our servers are in Ottawa and Montreal, so we're very much compliant with the Patriot Act. The data is stored very well within the soil of Canada. We serve the needs of Canadian legal practitioners, and we've been in business now for just under 14 years, believe it or not. And as part of our product experience, what you see here is I've logged in and I'm now accessing our contacts database. So imagine client being one of the special contact types within a legal firm, but uLaw allows you to capture various other types of contacts too. This could be vendors, this could be other parties involved in your matter too, beyond your client. But today's focus would be in specifically catering to the needs of client intake. And you can see right away there's a button which says Add New Client. So if you have someone at your office and you've got uLaw open, or someone's just given you a call, and you can do this right on your phone too. So today uLaw provides a uLaw app that allows you to do client intake right on your phone. But you're now dependent on the assumption that there is somebody on the other side who's giving you this information. Okay, so let's go with some Okay, so this is a very standard, simple way. You can see source of contact, internet advertising, notes. This is, again, imagining you are asking the question, saying, hey, how did you hear about us, by the way? They're like Facebook ads. It's like, that's cool. And can you give me your correspondence address? Right, so this is the customer on the other line. And if the customer is with you, you may even take their driver's license or passport or any, again, if this is a corporate client, maybe other means of client ID verification, add the phone number, email, quick save. This information, as you could see, is saved into our database, and it's saying saving contact. Once this information is saved, uLaw now prepares this contact client information for the next steps, which is that of the conflict search and for you to generate compliance documents, so on and so forth. Okay, so I really want to set the expectation of what you should expect once that client information is saved. But in this first example, you as the legal practitioner, or let's say Roger Moore or somebody at Roger Moore's office, was responsible for entering this client intake information into the system. Okay, first example. The second example could be that of the client intake form that we spoke about, which is a preset standard PDF document. And the templatization has been done by us at uLaw following the guidelines of the Law Society across provinces. We started off with LSO, and we've now evolved it to other provinces as well in the country, where you can send this fillable PDF form, let's call it that, right? And this form actually may have a lot more information that you specifically need as part of your client intake process, right? And hence, if you are using this form, just want you to appreciate and acknowledge that that is this template and that's the standard of this particular document when you send it over. So your customer can actually fill out their name, same information, but instead of you filling it out, you've now sent instead of having to enter it yourself, you're sending this form to them. Imagine them or they filling it out and then emailing it back to you. Once this document is filled out and emailed back to you, all you have to do is basically say upload client intake form. Of course, save that document that your customer sent you, choose that file and upload it. And just like how you have Tom Brady, you would now be able to create that new contact as well. As we do that, there's a quick question around deleting a contact. So for that, you need administrative privileges. So you would go under our settings, that's under accounts, action, administrator. you would enable yourself. So you would have to click the Enable Admin button. And right at the top, you would see Admin Mode Enabled. Once you have that enabled, once you go into a specific contact information, so let's say you go into Tom Brady one more time. There you go. You would find this delete button on the top right corner. Now there are some rules behind this. First is if you have already created a matter, even if it's unfortunately by mistake, if you've created a matter, then we allow you to just archive the matter and archive the client instead of completely deleting it, because we don't know in what context that matter was created, right? Because sometimes you can misappropriate it because we're trying to follow compliance. We do have certain rules behind it. But if there's no matter created, you can just go ahead and click the delete button and hit confirm, and that particular contact or client intake document or information is just deleted. Okay, so the Tom Brady at King Street is no more in our database because that information is now deleted. So hopefully that answered that question. Okay, so the second step is being able to, you using the client intake form, we have 4 different templates, downloading them, sending that PDF form via email, waiting for the customer to fill it out, kind of slightly old school. And the third, which I discussed briefly, is the ability for you to do your DIY. And I'll take a pause on that particular option today, because we do have our webinar coming up in a couple of weeks where we talk about automating your own forms. So I really would like to showcase all of that client intake form magnificence in terms of the customization capabilities in that webinar. But just be aware that the third option is you being able to create your own custom form today in uLaw. Client intake form being one of them. Okay? You can put your own logo, brand it, etc. The fourth option that we're really talking about today, of course, is the client portal. Now, there are some prerequisites before you can start it out, and it's at no extra charge. This is available to you as a current uLaw user or a potential user who's signed up. It's a feature that's built in. The prerequisite, though, is the ability for you to go into your settings, under contacts. Right at the bottom, you would see the client portal integration. By default, this is set to none. Okay, so you would set this to uLaw portal, so authorizing us or giving us the authorization that you would like uLaw's portal as a way for you to capture information or share information with your clients. And the next field would be empty as well if you aren't using it already. And we now encourage you to come up with a very strong, I would say, secret key. Now this has to be, or we recommend that it's different from the password that you have for logging in to the uLaw system. So you have a password to log in into the uLaw system, a username, password. In addition to that, we would like for you to create a secret key specific for your client portal. Right? For the reason for that is we have customers that have various different colleagues doing different functions. Sometimes the lawyer or the owner or the paralegal does not want the client intake personnel to specifically dial in without a specific password, and hence they set the secret key and they ensure privacy through that. Because essentially what's going to happen is we're going to be sending out a link, pretty much a public link, if you will, but then that's customized specific to a customer with the password protection, the secret key protection, encrypted, so that the customer can then fill out that information rather than being on a PDF form, doing it right through a web form. Okay. All right, so you set the secret key, and then you're set. You basically hit the save button, and you're pretty much done as a first step to enable the client portal. Next step is if you have a prospective customer or somebody who's just shown interest in wanting to engage you, and let's say your first step is to capture client intake information. You don't send them a PDF. You don't call them to enter that information. You simply click the client portal, and there's two pieces of information we ask you for. One, what is their email address? Because that's how we're going to identify the customer. So I'm going to be using my personal ID just as an example. And the secret key. So I've created one for this test instance, and you can create your own. And then you click the generate portal link. And right away there's two components that have already been created. And this is a secure, as you can see, HTTPS. It's within the uLaw system. It's just an extension of the uLaw platform, like how this is uLawPractice.com. This is uLaw.io, right? Now, either you can copy this link, or you can generate a QR code. You can right-click on this QR code, save this image, and then send that as an email, or send that along as a text, or as a WhatsApp message, so that the customer then scans that QR code, and just like how you are used to seeing it at restaurants post-COVID, rather than having to click a link or type, you just scan the QR code and it takes you directly into that secured link. The link behind this QR code is this particular link that we've already copied. Now, how you send this information is, again, very custom to your own business, to how you have been corresponding, or best practices and privacy policies that you follow in your firm. The simplest that we've seen is through an email. I always love using the predefined templates that both Yahoo and Gmail provide. I'm a big user of Gmail. I can spin these templates in a matter of seconds, actually. I encourage all customers who are using Gmail or Office 365 to come up with these templatized templates, for lack of a better term, so it's easier to send out those very canned emails. Okay, so let's say I'm sending this to the same individual. So let's say I put a bit of a timeline. Let's say, again, this is not going to make sense, but let's just say now you copy that link that we just, or paste that link that you just copied. This is a unique link. Let me just redo that real quick. Okay, and then you send. Of course, if you have our uLaw toolbox, you can even save that as a docket, but it doesn't make sense in this context yet, because this is your first step. I don't want to go there yet. But as you can see, once we start to evolve the portal solution, you could start to send information into the portal or upload information into the portal and now share it with your customer. Okay, that's the intent. All right, so let's say this is me, and I've just received this email from Roger Moore. Just making sure I sent it out right. Okay. Probably have to give it a couple of minutes. Let's assume you've got that email. You click on that link, and I'll show you that email once it is received. Your customer is presented with this form. Now, this is a web responsive form, and what that really means is if your customer is accessing his or her email using their mobile phone, this particular form would be easily adaptable and it's responsive so that they can fill this form out even from a phone, which is maybe the bigger advantage to a PDF form, because the PDF form, just based on its the delivery mechanism of that form and some of the validations that exist in those forms, it's just slightly harder depending on the device. But if you send out a web form, again, this is now readily available whether they're an iPhone user or Android or otherwise, right? So you could say this is Peter Manning. Okay, I'm just going to put in some basic information. So very similar to how you would have entered information into the uLaw system, how you would have captured PDF form, we're just representing this now in a more secure, modern, web responsive form. Okay? Okay. Let's capture some phone number. Okay? And some additional information. So this is really where these three questions can help you better qualify your potential prospective customer based on the client intake, ask some pertinent information that you need to do some further validation. So what is this matter about? This is regarding a landlord issue. This could be a family. It could be anything. It's free text. How did you hear about us? Let's just go ahead with the Facebook ads. Let's say Facebook is really working for you. And what type of a photo ID or verification or validation document do you have? Government certified, can provide passport. Okay. Now, as a provider, we want to ensure the security of your own uLaw system, and hence we make sure that it's not a robot. Next, we want to ensure the confidentiality aspects, and we want to make sure that you're covered, and hence you can have this text. And you can see this is now customized. Roger Moore Law Firm Professional Corporation pretty much comes from the settings. Right from here, the company name, and hence filling that out in the detailed section can be very important. And then the customer can submit that information. And you can see it does some validations. Let's say we validate that. I acknowledge one more time. And I submit. No thanks. And your customer Peter gets this information saying, hey, thank you so much. This is done. And with that, the customer has entered their information and has presented that first intake information to your firm. Now, two things happen once this form has been submitted. First, you get the email, something similar to this. So here is a client intake form. Right away you get information saying you have a new client. Or this could be even prospective new client, but you have a new client, the name of that client, contact information, email address. And we also, the second aspect to it is this information is automatically stored on the uLaw system, which is now ready for you to consume and take next steps, both on your app as well as the native web application. So let me show you the web application. I'm really surprised I haven't received that email yet. Oh, there you go. We're just faster than Yahoo. I just have to say that. There you go. So that's the email. You would have clicked that link to get to that. All right. So the second thing which I mentioned is you don't have to save that information. In the previous instances, if let's say this is a PDF form, you have to then do one other step, which is upload that client intake form. In this, you don't even have to do that. Okay? And the reason for that is, we'll just give it a couple of seconds here. That information is already available in your dashboard. So this is a recently modified contacts dashboard element within our landing page that tells you constantly the new contacts that are being added into the uLaw system. So if it's your front office personnel who are using this are seeing it, or it could be yourself seeing this email, or you could have a group email that you send this information to, or a specific client intake executive group that you send it to. No matter how you spin that, that data is now already stored within the uLaw system, right? And of course, this is the aha moment. I don't know if I sold it right, but I don't have anything else as a magic up my sleeve. But the beauty of this is that in a secured fashion, and this could happen eventually, where we want to get to is embed or integrate this as an option right on your website. So we're currently doing the R&D to make sure that it's secure. You may have to create that portal link for now and send it over to your customer. But once you've done that, then you can pretty much sleep at night, come the next day morning, and that information is available to you. Of course, you can further that information. You can make tweaks to it like anything else, but all that information is available. You have your notes, how do we find you, Facebook ads. So let's say Facebook. You want to capture all the information, and then just hit save. Now this proceeds you to move on to the next step, which is doing the client intake process. Okay? So let's say conflict check. You can do that right away. Okay, so I'll stop right there. And we've been able to, of course, showcase a couple of simpler ways to do client intake, but then the portal kind of being the more recent way in which create the link, send it to the customer, have them input that data. That information is automatically saved into the uLaw system in a very secure manner. And you also get notified by email about that potential customer, and you're now ready and equipped to move on to the next stages of that client intake service and communication. Okay? As I said, I would be definitely welcoming you to that webinar in a couple of weeks where we show you the DIY, where, of course, if this is not suitable for a certain specific audience, you can always call them, intake them the way that we did before, or you can send them a PDF document, have them fill it out, send it back to you, you upload it. You still have that option. As I mentioned, we have 4 different ways of doing this. But as we continue to invest and build this portal solution, we're starting to see how cohesive and important these ecosystems would be to your business, because it's only going to make your lives that much more efficient. And in many ways, for the systems to work in your behalf to help automate many of the other manual tasks that you used to do. Okay, so imagine the same idea being extended where you create an invoice, you upload it into the portal, and the client gets notified of that, they review it. You create a retainer letter, upload it into the portal, you don't have to send an email. You get notified as they open it, they sign it, send it back. So that's the plan, let's call it, a development plan for features to come this year. So let me take a quick pause. As I said, the main element of today's webinar was to showcase the client portal automation of the client intake process. I once again apologize for any miscommunication around the CPD, but we'll definitely not disappoint you next week. It is a 1-hour professionalism CPD session where we talk about everyone's fun topic around disbursements. And I'll pause right now to see if there are any questions that you have from everything that you've heard and seen the past 40 minutes. Quick question around OneNote. So the two major ecosystems that we integrate with today are around Google and Microsoft. So what we've integrated is around document storage, and now we're integrating with email. So the next evolution is going to be where this is not going to be available for you to consume via the Office 365 integration. OneNote, and again, it comes down to how you use OneNote for note-taking or things of that nature. So we can certainly talk about that, but we're definitely looking at integration capabilities across all these supplementary products, one thing at a time. It's not there yet, but we have an R&D team that we're building today that can deliver this faster than we used to before. Because we've, again, just expanding on that answer and just making a little bit more prudence. If you kindly notice today, what we're doing is we're also extending integrations with now some of the leading financial institutions. Right, so uLaw right now is completely API enabled, and we've got secure sockets for these third-party integration. One of our brand new integration is around importing bank statements, so we can currently connect with any financial institution that you have, right? So that's a new feature. So we've really enabled the API aspect of it to connect with third-party systems. So we can certainly take this offline with you and talk about how best we can integrate OneNote based on what you have. But having said that, again, I can draw your attention to, for note-taking and storing data from the cloud, the fact that we do integrate with OneDrive gives you the access to the Office 365 environment, right? And we could certainly look at how we can bring, if OneNote is already in your Office 365 or otherwise, we'll have to figure that out. We can certainly bring that information right into the matter. So let me make a note, and maybe the support staff can make a quick note of that and ensure that we follow up. Any other questions pertaining to the portal? Again, the hope and the wish is that if you aren't using this, that give it a try and see how it works for your business. And of course, we'd love your feedback on how we can make this better. But we certainly think we've embarked on this new path of efficiencies and automation for your firm. Okay, quick question around password. Now, you are able to create that one time in the contact section under secret key. And you would have to use that. So it's different, and I think I mentioned this earlier. That's different from the password that you use to log in into the uLaw system. So this secret key is what you set up in your settings under contacts. Okay? Any other questions around portal? Okay. This session is being recorded and will be available to you on our YouTube channel next week, as early as Monday. But I definitely want to thank you for your participation. Please do email us of other subject areas or topics that you would like for us to cover. We're kind of balancing between CPD and non-CPD sessions. Our session next week is a CPD session around disbursements demystified, and today's session was not a CPD session. I think I mentioned that earlier. Today was non-CPD, and next week's session will be CPD. Okay? Yeah, I do apologize. I have to check what the miscommunication was, so I do apologize if you were misled to believe that today's session was a CPD. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.